Thank you for joining me today. Well, I think we have an exciting program for you. Exciting because the title of it is The World in Chaos. And I'll tell you this, if you've been watching the news over the last 2 or 3 weeks, you know that it's in chaos. And in many ways, we want to do an update. Remember, we did our panel with about 6 of us, and we discussed a number of problems. Well, those problems have grown more complex, and we've added a few. And so really, as I look at the topics, I have 8 topics, and what I'd like to do is just kind of catch you up to date on some of these things because they all converge to the fact that we're living in the last days. We're living in a time when people want peace and safety, they want security, they want a good life, and what the world hands them back is chaos. I think as we look at this, you'll be able to say with me, you know what? The world in chaos, the world desiring peace and safety, it's a great indicator that we're living in the last days. So I'm going to try to tie in Iran. I'm going to try to tie in AI. I'm going to try to tie in corruption that we see. And for sure, the situation with Gaza and Israel. All these we're going to try to tie in together. So join me for an exciting program today. Well, I want to begin with this video because at the World Economic Forum, they gave a summary statement. And this summary statement is one that they actually put out themselves. And they said, World Economic Forum, 10 scariest things. Now, if they think they're scary, you can imagine what we'll think. But as we begin to unload these 10 scariest things, let me tell you this. Their stance on all 10, I disagree with every one of them. I bet you will too. But here we go.
I could argue in the developed countries, the big winners are countries that have shrinking populations.
You do not even have to have elections anymore because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be.
Our primary mission is, in fact, to set a global standard for the world for behavior.
What we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.
You want the function, you want the service, right? Why do you want to own a cell phone if you can just lease it? And if you lease, why shouldn't you lease your refrigerator or your washing machine or your dishwasher, or why do you want to own it?
I propose putting an end to anonymity on social media.
If 1 billion people stop eating meat, I tell you it has a big impact.
Can you imagine that in 10 years when we are sitting here, we have an implant in our brains? And we measure your brain waves.
There's some really interesting research that we can plant false memories in the brain. People believing that they've been at Disney World with characters who are not Disney characters, taking photographs with those characters.
And substituting humans for machines is going to be far easier in those countries that have declining populations.
Wow. Wow. Isn't that incredible? These were all discussed at the World Economic Forum. Here's what I would conclude from this. I don't know that I trust those people to make a decision. Because if they think the whole solution is depopulation, well, the Bible mentions in Revelation chapter 6 that among the first several seals that are broken, that's going to occur. And I know from other proceedings from other World Economic Forum conferences, they even proposed that 1/4 of the world needs to be eliminated to help us give a better quality of life. Or how about the idea that we don't need elections at all? We know what you want. They don't know what we want. Or don't own anything. Or don't eat meat. Or brain implants. Matter of fact, I was reading another story where they said we can actually make it so that we can have a working population using machines that will be way more agreeable and easier to work with than humans. And so this article is saying, we think almost immediately, like in the next 18 months, we could replace 40% of the work population. So what will these people do? It's unbelievable to see that false memories, that they want to implant in your mind false memories to probably to wipe out crimes that were done or so that you don't go back against them. It's just one thing after another. The world in chaos. That's why I call it the world in chaos. Now, let's talk about some particular problems. And I want to go right away to this one called the Board of Peace is at the Board of Prophets. And the reason I say that is because just recently they had their first meeting. And I tried to follow it as close as I can. I'm sure that many of you did, but it was unbelievable what they actually said. Watch as we look at some of the things. For example, when they met for the first time, the aim was a high-level event to raise funds for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Now, originally the Board of Peace was to be for making peace. And remember, they said it goes way beyond Gaza, but it's to be Russia and Ukraine, is to be la, 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 la. But now we find out, well, there's a price tag, and the price tag was incredible. The price tag was $1 billion a seat. And we watch people come and go. We watch Macron come on and then get kicked off. We watch Turkey come and get kicked off. We've seen Qatar go on, and why would you have Qatar? Well, because they got $1 billion. And so then we found out that really the point of this, even though it was going way beyond Gaza and Israel, was essentially to raise money for reconstruction. Aren't we putting the cart before the horse? I mean, I thought, first of all, we had a 20-step process. And the first one was to bring back all the hostages. They finally did, dead and alive. They finally brought it back. Israel brought it back. IDF got the last one back. But now they're going to the reconstruction phase, and we haven't even taken the arms away from Hamas. We'll talk more about that later. But you see why people are dubious of this. Well, here again is, I think, an important clip, because this talks about Trump as he talks on such a large scale. And the large scale is incredible because it goes way beyond, yes, it goes beyond Israel and Gaza, but this Board of Peace now is expanding its power, its outreach. Listen to this.
I want to let you know that the United States is going to make a contribution of $10 billion to the Board of Peace. Thank you. And we've had great support for that number. And that number is a very small number when you look at that compared to the cost of war. That's 2 weeks of fighting. It's a very small number. It sounds like a lot, but it's a very small number. So we're committed to $10 billion. Together we can achieve the dream of bringing lasting harmony to a region tortured by centuries of war.
But you get the point. And that's why it's going from the Board of Peace to the Board of Prophets. You pay $1 billion to get a seat. Matter of fact, I see with the Pope on there. So they got a religious component of that. But the people are coming and going, because if you get a little bit out of sorts with Mr. Trump, well, you're liable to lose your seat, even if you have $1 billion. And evidently that's not enough money, so the United States is going to give $10 billion. But there's another problem, and maybe a bigger problem. It has to do with the fact that all these negotiations, right, at the moment are at a stalemate. A stalemate because, you see, Israel, they're asking Israel to compromise on the land. I hope they don't. I don't like the two-state solution. The Bible doesn't like the two-state solution. God doesn't like a two-state solution. And so they're forcing Israel to say, okay, you've got to take the next step. Even though Hamas is not de-armed, take the next step. But that's not the only problem point. There's another problem point. It's Iran. Iran refuses to negotiate. Listen to this clip and you'll see what I'm talking about.
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. It's been typically, Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators, because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable.
Yeah, we're running a little bit of problem, aren't we? Because remember how that the citizens of Iran protested their government. And essentially the United States and Mr. Trump said, okay, you know, go for this. We're behind you, we're with you. Only have 30 to 40,000 of them lose their lives, and we weren't behind them. And let me tell you, the people of Iran feel betrayed by this whole process. So if you do a negotiated peace, but you don't back it up, it leaves some people wondering, okay, are you really in control? Now, don't get me wrong. I would like to see the regime in Iran fall myself. Yeah, I'd like to see a peace between Russia and Ukraine. I don't want people to die. I'd like for Gaza to have a solution of Israel there and find the Palestinians a place to live in other countries. It's fine. But Hamas must be de-armed. And so it's going to be as easy to de-arm Hamas as it is to de-arm Iran. Matter of fact, let me just show you what's taking place. This is a recent map. And if you'll notice the large convergence of military weapons there, we now have 2 large warships there. And you see the collection, it's even bigger than it was a year ago, or less than a year ago, when we had the Iron Hammer. Yeah, the hammer and all that went on was we thought we destroyed the nuclear power plants of Iran. I think we did. We at least put them in bad shape. And that list of ships grows. Look, incredible. 2 aircraft carriers. And by the way, Iran has already threatened that they can sink them. Well, I'm not sure they have that equipment, but nonetheless, we don't want them to. Hundreds of fighter jets, 12 warships. This is incredible, and we're dealing with oil. We're dealing with huge number of fighter jets, of military cargo planes. Wow, unbelievable. F-35s, F-22s, F-16s. Hey, let me just tell you this. Look at that statistic. Not since 2003 Iraq invasion have we had that much equipment, U.S. equipment, besides other equipment in that area. The world's in chaos. And then here's Mr. Rubio, and he speaks of a situation that I think emphasizes the willingness to negotiate, but negotiate in our fashion. Otherwise, there's a big threat. Listen to this.
The president always prefers peaceful outcomes and negotiated outcomes to things. He's a president that's shown his willingness to talk to anyone and meet with anyone. And I think if there's an opportunity here to diplomatically reach an agreement that addresses the things we're concerned about, we will be very open and welcoming to that. But I don't want to overstate it either. It's going to be hard. I mean, we're dealing, it's been very difficult for anyone to do real deals with Iran because we're dealing with radical Shia clerics who are making theological decisions, not geopolitical ones. But let's see what happens. I hope it works out. We all hope it works out.
Well, that's part of the problem, but not all the problem. Because another part probably comes with this Trump and the officials. They have the wealth on their side. They've got a regime that they're trying to topple. But what's interesting is many people say, okay, there's something that we don't like about this. Matter of fact, it's the fact that Trump has given his son-in-law, and he's now called the envoy for peace. He's kind of the head negotiator. But the problem is not the fact that he's the head negotiator, but look at this. Many people say maybe he's in it for the profit because he has billions invested in foreign governments. And I think that is a problem. You see, the board of peace went to the board of profits. The negotiators are now people who have invested money. Some are investing in the rehabilitation of Gaza to make it the Riviera. And others have great investments in countries and products made by countries. It's beginning to look like money dictates the whole thing. Corruption is easy when there's money. And so here it is. Trump allows Hamas to retain some weapons. Yeah. Matter of fact, in one article it said this, never once did the negotiators, Steve and Jared, never once did they mention they couldn't enrich uranium. That was never mentioned. I can't believe they wouldn't do that. But now they're coming back and saying, okay, maybe they should retain some weapons. That's not going to work. The 20-step process is broken down. And if you think that's just an isolated report, look at this. Rejects Trump's demand for Hamas to disarm. Folks, the Gaza situation is at a mess because they put reconstruction and money ahead of de-arming Hamas. The Iranian situation with Israel is a mess because we have a large collection, explosive collection of weapons there. And it comes back to money and oil again and investments in other Arab countries around the world. Wow, the idea of this called the Board of Prophets, I see now where people are coming from. And by the way, speaking of Gaza and disarming Hamas, well, look at this. Beneath Gaza, Israel's war with Hamas has only just begun. Phase 2, ceasefire. Look at these incredible passages. I mean, they're finding dozens more and more and more. And plenty of places to load weapons. And so if that's not an important command, it's never going to stop. Well, I want to keep going because I told you 8 subjects. Here's one that's going to shock you. This is quite an interview. And of all things, it's actually a former IRG officer. And he's talking to a news reporter. It's about Saudi Arabia. And I just want you to hear this, because if you think that if we could eliminate nuclear weapons in Iran, we've got a safe Middle East. No, listen to this interview.
I have information, very information about this and intelligence that Saudi Arabia at this time, they have a nuclear bomb and activities. The United States know very well. But
Saudi, hold on. You just said Saudi Arabia right now already has nuclear capability. They have the ability to use a nuclear bomb.
Yes, that's right.
Right now?
Yes, right now.
How do you know that?
We have a lot of information from the other Arab countries. For example, some Yemeni working inside the site of the nuclear inside the Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, many of us suspected that, at least I did. I think other people did. But to have somebody tattle on them was really something. And so Saudi Arabia, with their money, they can very easily develop nuclear weapons. They probably have more money than any single country per capita. And they have people that can incorporate nuclear weapons. They've done it. Iran has difficulty sustaining it. Iran is dependent on oil money and other favors from Russia and from China. China particularly for the missiles. We call them red missiles because they have the Chinese design. They're made and developed in China, but they're high speed. And the Russian missiles aren't so good, but Russia has great technology in terms of nuclear power. Do you see the world in chaos? We think we're putting out one fire only to find that there's 2 or 3 other fires already going. Well, remember I told you I want to visit 8 problems. That's 3 of them. Here's one. Our universities. Why is it that our universities aren't concentrated on education? I don't know of a single parent that's not upset about education, because all of a sudden we've seen that our students are more interested in protesting than they are in learning. We used to send them to college to become an engineer or a pharmacist or a doctor or a physical therapist or a teacher or a lawyer. But no, now we send them there and they spend a lot of time protesting. Why would they be protesting, and why would they all be against, let's say, Israel and God? Well, this little clip may explain some of that for you.
Across an email from a gentleman named Charles Hogan. Charles Hogan was the vice president of Yale. And he was very antagonistic to the work we did. And he was, I would say, and I don't use the word lightly, he was an old school anti-Semite to his core. So Charles Hogan was working for a pharmaceutical company in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I Googled the company. It was owned by the Ben Mahfouz family. Ben Mahfouz had a chemical factory in the Sudan that the Clinton administration attacked because they were building weapons for terrorists. In a very short period of time, I found all sorts of connections of Muslim Brotherhood money and terror finance money going to Yale, going to universities in the United States. And this led me on this rabbit hole. And I do social theory and philosophy, and I was reading all this stuff. And I found all these connections in just about an hour. And I didn't know if this was my imagination gone wild or this was the tip of an iceberg. And I brought it to professors and experts on counterterrorism and terror financing. And 2 of these leading scholars were like, yes, we know this institution, we know this family, and yes, this is a tip of an iceberg. So what I did, my parents have a retired forensic accountant as a neighbor, and I told him the story. So he volunteered and worked with me for many years, and I have a friend who's also a scholar on the Muslim Brotherhood. And the three of us, without any budget, spent 7 years researching the illegal entry of money into American universities. We found $3 billion. Ended up presenting our findings in Washington in front of 100 top civil servants, including the head of Homeland Security, the Attorney General, the head of the FBI. We presented our work. The federal government launched an investigation, and they found tens of billions of dollars of illegal money coming into American universities. The Biden administration called off the investigation as soon as it was in power. And because of our success, we were able to raise money and build a team of experts. And now we're about 25 experts who are experts of the Muslim Brotherhood, anti-Semitism, and terror financing. And we've done 15 reports since October the 7th in the United States on higher education and the buying by the Qataris and the Muslim Brotherhood of our education system. We've done 2 reports on Canada. We're coming out with a major report on the United Kingdom. We've done a report on Australia and South Africa. And we're exposing this network of up to $1 trillion of assets where the Brotherhood is using the Qataris to use soft power to take over our government and our institutions.
I don't know about you, but it makes me sick in my stomach. Now, it's another story, one of my 8 stories, and it has to do with money and corruption. $1 trillion. In other words, he's saying that the Muslim Brotherhood is either owns or is greatly influencing education, and they're doing it by giving grants, large grants to universities, and that changes the whole political scheme of the university. It makes them so that they're really protesters and not learners. Sad, isn't it? Well, money has corrupted. This is why I'm worried about the Board of Prophets and the Board of Peace. We see what money does. Universities are ruined. Relationships between countries have been ruined by economics, by overpowering economics. The truth has been hidden. And if you think it's just in there, it also occurs in our country. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you 2 clips back to back. I'm going to break them up, but it has to do with the idea of public funds and who is influencing and who is controlling public funds. Could it be foreign governments? This is Senator Haley. I love watching him operate. I think you're going to enjoy this clip.
As well as everybody who is in the room and joining us online. The title of today's hearing is Examining Fraud and Foreign Influence in State and Federal Programs. And today's hearing is going to examine 2 pillars that are truly fundamental to our republic and to the confidence of the American people in our republic. And that is the integrity of our public funds and the integrity of our political system. Let me just start with the second one. As early as the Constitutional Convention, Alexander Hamilton warned that foreign powers would try to exploit America's freedoms to sow divisions inside our country. Threats from foreign influence, he said, should never be dismissed as idle or as hypothetical. And today we are confronting a raft of allegations and reports that foreign influence and foreign money is making its way into the American political system and is financing activities that is not only destructive, detrimental, and divisive, but also potentially illegal. At the same time, more and more Americans are rightly concerned about the use of their tax dollars and where their tax money is being spent around the country. You know, I've often thought, watching and reading reports here in recent months, that if you are a hardworking American taxpayer, if you're somebody who wakes up every morning, goes to your job, plays by the rules, pays your taxes, you must feel like such an idiot. I mean, you must feel so taken advantage of. Because here we have reports, credible reports, and we're going to hear more about it today with some substantiation of billions of dollars of taxpayer money, your tax funds being taken and spent on illicit activities, on foreign overseas activities, on other illegal and criminal activities. It's absolutely outrageous, and it's time that we got accountability for how Americans' hard-earned tax dollars are being spent and how the integrity of our political system is being protected. We're going to hear testimony that tens of billions of dollars intended to serve the public have been lost to fraud in the state of Minnesota alone. Organized criminal syndicates stole COVID-era disaster money to the tune of billions of dollars, and since then they have defrauded money from every single federally funded program in the state of Minnesota. Let me say that again. Every single federally funded program in the state of Minnesota. Programs intended for children, for the elderly, for the poor.
Wow. It almost makes you sick. The world in chaos. You know, the Bible talks about money's the love of money is the root of all evil. And we're beginning to see that. And as I look at the description of the Antichrist, I see that he has incredible economic powers. Somehow he gets them all. Somehow he's handed those. I'm going to tell you how I think that might occur. But I want you to continue on this. But notice this, we looked at the story concerning universities. $1 trillion have been used to bribe universities to send their students out protesting, not to educate them, but to protest, to make a point. It looks like the whole world, to brainwash our kids. Now we're looking at public funds, how that money's been stolen from every agency. It's unbelievable. There's times when I wonder, why are we putting up with it? Don't you wonder what your real tax bill ought to be? And yet, even today, I saw where New Jersey, the governor of New Jersey is saying, we're going to have to increase taxes. New York City, the guy's saying, we got to tax the rich. Why? So they can put more illegal money into power against the people who are paying the taxes? Unbelievable, isn't it? My friend, I know that corruption is a horrible thing. I know that corruption defiles the very people that work to put the money in. You know what? I wouldn't mind paying taxes if you look and say, look, it built a road. Look, it took care of people that really have a need. It was used to educate people. But when you see it taken and defrauded, and when you see foreign governments coming to rule our country by fraud, unbelievable. Well, here's the second half of Senator Haley's little speech. By the way, it goes on for over an hour, just a couple more minutes, and you'll see my point.
The sick, for the most vulnerable Americans. We're going to hear testimony that $9 billion has been defrauded in Minnesota from Medicaid alone. $9 billion. Vanishing into luxury cars, overseas vacations, billions going to fund foreign adversaries, billions shipped out of the country. In the last 2 years alone, get this now, nearly $700 million in cold, hard cash was stuffed into suitcases and flown out of Minneapolis. $700 million. That is 14,000 pounds of $100 bills in suitcases, flown out of our country overseas. We're going to hear testimony that American taxpayers nationwide are losing north of $1 trillion a year in government programs. That's the Pentagon's entire budget. $1 trillion a year. This isn't isolated crooks gaming the system. I wish it were. It's transnational criminal syndicates siphoning money out of America. 70% of that loot flows overseas, funding cartels, terrorists, adversaries like North Korea, China, Iran, Russia. Money meant for American grandparents, working families, the elderly, the sick, is instead funding organized crime, arming our enemies, and subsidizing the trafficking of children. And the threats don't end there. In recent weeks, we have seen anti-ICE protests escalate into outright lawlessness. What we're going to hear testimony about today is these were not spontaneous protests in many cases. It's manufactured chaos. And who is behind it? Dark money networks and foreign actors, some of whom have ties to the Chinese Communist Party. We're going to hear testimony that these activities are funded and coordinated by a dense network of nonprofits and foreign-linked actors who use layer upon layer of pass-through entities to hide the money trail. A classic dark money laundering, to take foreign money and foreign influence and to dump it into our political system. It's sort of like Riot Incorporated. Pre-planned tactics designed not to protest, but to destabilize, to erode faith in our institutions, and to force political change through manufactured crises. Listen, at the end of the day, this hearing is about a simple question. Is our government equipped to safeguard taxpayer dollars, protect the rule of law, and defend our institutions from exploitation, because right now it sure doesn't look like it.
Wow, what a mouthful. Well, what would be the system by which they could continue to do this type of thing? Well, remember I told you I had a lot of stories, a lot of news. And I can tell that we just can't do it all in one session. So we're going to break here. But I want you to realize that we're watching chaos break out all over the world. Yeah, it's in the Middle East. It's in Russia. It's in Ukraine. It's one story after another. It's in our government, even here in the United States, the corruption. The things that are taking place are beyond imagination. And it's going at such a rapid pace. And so that's why I think it's important for us to take a look at this and say, aren't you glad that God has a solution? You know what his solution is? He's going to come for the believers in Christ. He's going to take us to be with him in heaven. You see, the world lives in chaos. And it's in this system of chaos that the Antichrist will find his place to deceive people even more, to get them to trust everything over to him. But my friend, I'm telling you that the Bible has a different plan. God's plan, he would send his son, Jesus Christ. The world would be so corrupt even then that it would crucify him. God could have stopped that, but instead he said, no, allow that to take place, because that way the sins of the world can be forgiven, paid for by the death of Christ. Shedding his blood, he paid for my sins, for your sins. My friend, chaos turned to victory, and that's what God plans to do again as he takes the church out. So we'll stop with part 1 of chaos in the world, and next week we'll continue. Thank you for joining me today. Look for the return of Christ. In the meantime, read God's words, stand against evil, and pray, God, your will be done on heaven as it is on earth. Thank you for joining me today. God bless you.